So today I'm going to continue chapter 3. Do you have any questions so far? All right. So we've been talking about exchange rates, foreign exchange market, and the asset approach. Yes. So last time we've been talking about the exchange rates, depreciation, appreciation, foreign exchange markets, the players, and then we talk about spot rate versus forward rate, foreign exchange swap, future contracts, options contract, and then we talk about the return, the rate of return. We talk about the distinction between nominal rate of return and real rate of return. And the real rate of return will determine the incentive to save. But when we compare between different currency deposits, we only need to compare the nominal rate of return because they are all subject to the same exchange rate, same inflation rate. So as long as the inflation rate are the same, then we don't. Then we only need to compare the nominal rate of return. So the idea is that the trading of deposits in different currencies occur on a daily basis. So we often assume that prices should not change from day to day. So that's why we only need to compare the nominal rate, because comparing nominal rate is just like comparing the real rates. Other things we have to worry about. So basically, what we're now doing is to remind you is we want to derive a economic theory concerning how exchange rate is determined, how the spot exchange rate is determined. So we have to compare. Basically, we're going to derive a equilibrium condition such that investors are indifferent between holding all the different currency deposits. Okay. So what are the demand of currency deposits? Well, first of all, we have the rate of return, and secondly, we have to worry about the risk and liquidity. Right. So risk and liquidity are important. So can anybody tell me what do we mean by risk of holding certain currency deposit? What's the risk? What are the risks involved there? So if let's say I have some Japanese yen. I want to invest. I'm considering investing in Australian dollar. Okay, let's say I'm Japanese. Okay, so I'm Japanese. I hold a lot of yen. My income comes from yen. Okay, my incomes are denominated in yen, but I am considering investing some of my yen in Australian dollar. Right, some of my money in Australian dollar. So I have to convert the yen into Australian dollar, put it in deposit, time deposit for, let's say, 1 year, right? So after 1 year, it will earn some interest in the Australian dollar account, and then after 1 year, I have the option of exchanging the Australian dollar back into yen. Okay, so I would compare. So therefore, I will have to compare whether this is a better deal than, let's say, I just put my Japanese yen in a Japanese account and earn interest. Right. So that is the thought experiment. Very simple thought experiment, very simple mathematics, right? Now, but that is only, so you would imagine that in equilibrium, in order for there to be no arbitrage, I would be indifferent between holding yen deposit or Australian deposit as long as the interest rate differences is equal to the expected rate of appreciation of the currency. So this is basically the idea here. So we're going to derive a condition, and this condition is called uncovered interest parity. Okay, this uncovered interest parity condition is basically like a no arbitrage condition. Okay, so people are indifferent. Investors are indifferent between holding different currency deposits in equilibrium. Okay. Now, but in order to do that, in order for there to be no arbitrage, people are indifferent between holding a different currency. So come back to the question: if I have yen and I have Australian, and I'm thinking about investing in Australian dollar. So would you be concerned? So I'm talking about the risk here, right? So what is the risk here? If I'm a Japanese holding some yen and thinking about investing in Australia. So what's the risk that we're talking about here? Can anybody tell me what risk are we talking? What's risk in this case? Yeah. Inflation. Do you really care about inflation in Australia in this case? You just right. You just convert your yen into Australian dollar, put it in a bank, Australian bank, earn some interest, and then you convert the Australian all the Australian dollar. Huh? Okay. Appreciation of the Australian dollar versus the yen. Yeah, obviously you worry about that, but is this risk? Is this really risk that we're talking about here? It is okay. So can you elaborate a little bit more? Okay, so sorry. Yeah, you actually getting a little close, but can you elaborate a little bit more? What do you mean by the risk? Okay, so the risk of this rate of appreciation?
Maybe if you're changing your yen into Australian dollar, and you expect it might close to the same exchange rate, but then Australian dollar depreciate.
Yeah, it may not. So you were expected to, let's say, expected to appreciate for 3%. But it may not be. It may not turn out to be what you expect, right? You expect it to be 3%, but it may turn out to be 5%, in which case it's a good news. But it may turn out to be just 1%, which is lower than you expected. So you kind of somehow you're disappointed, right? So that variability of that rate of appreciation is the risk. Okay, so we define risk as the variability. Okay, so this is how we define risk in finance. Okay, risk is the variability. As in particular, the exchange rate risk here. Okay, exchange rate. Of course, you may say that there may be some default risk, but usually the default risk is not very high, so we usually don't don't worry about the default risk. The default risk meaning that, the bank goes bankrupt. Okay, you lose your deposit. But usually there is nowadays deposits are insured, right? You have the deposit insurance almost in all countries. So default risk is not very high in the currency deposit. Now, so how about the liquidity? So liquidity, right? So how you can, let's say, after 1 year, you want to convert the Australian dollar back into yen, but you cannot convert it for some reason. Because you may have to, you cannot immediately convert it. That would be the problem of liquidity. If that is, if you cannot easily convert, that would be the problem of liquidity. So in general, for assets, we do worry about liquidity. Okay. So in general, if we talk about all sorts of assets, like if you buy a real property, if you buy real estate, if you buy a piece of real estate, that is not a very liquid asset, right? Because in order to sell it, it takes a long time, and it takes a long time, and the transaction cost is very high. Okay, so it's not very liquid. Real estate is not very liquid. But foreign currency deposit, on the other hand, are very, very liquid, usually. The market is very large, foreign exchange market. So we're talking about for the major currencies, you usually don't have a liquidity problem. Okay, so yeah, transaction cost may be an issue, but usually it's not an important issue. Okay, in foreign exchange foreign currency deposits. Okay. So therefore, we tend to not to worry too much about risk and liquidity. So here's a few slides that I try to explain why we don't have to worry too much about risk and liquidity. Especially because a lot of these in the foreign exchange market, the players are usually very large. As we mentioned, commercial banks, for example, Citibanks, UBS, HSBC, all these banks, they are very, very large, and they're very large players. So they, so for risk, they are usually very diversified in their portfolio. So they don't, they're basically what we call risk neutral. Risk neutral. They are not really risk averse. Okay, so they don't really worry about risk. The foreign exchange market, this exchange rates, okay, they are actually determined by the actions of the large players. Okay, so the large players, only the large players matter actually, or by and large, it's the large players that matter. Okay, the small players do not matter that much. So for example, there are importers and exporters. Okay, they are actually risk-averse people. Okay, but they are not large players. Okay, so there are different types of people. So in a sense, you may think of the large players, those commercial banks and maybe even mutual funds, insurance companies, hedge funds, this kind of players, these large players, they are actually, their motive in participating in the foreign exchange market is speculative. It's speculative motive. Okay, they are large players, they're risk neutral, and they are sort of speculative. The importers and exporters, they need to participate in the foreign exchange market for hedging purposes. So their motive, the importers and exporters, their motive is more hedging. It's a hedging motive. So what do I mean by hedging motive? So hedging motive, I mean like I'm an importer or exporter. I engage in international trade, but I worry about exchange rate risk. So I go to the foreign exchange market and buy forward contract, okay, so that I can hedge my risk. I want to make sure that I would get back certain amount of my own currency. If I trade with you, I sell goods to you. When I sell goods to you, maybe I'll get some foreign currency, but I need to hedge my risk. That's why I go and buy forward contract to hedge my risk. So that's the hedging motive. And the reason why they buy forward contract to avoid the risk, foreign exchange risk, that motive is called hedging motive. Okay, so these large players, their motive is different. These large players, these commercial banks, their motive is speculative. They want to get higher return, higher yield. Okay, they are risk neutral rather than risk averse. So that's why the large players are motivated by the speculative motive, and so they care only about expected returns. The important exporters are motivated by hedging motive, and say they do care about risk and liquidity, right? But we assume that the speculative motive for holding foreign currency is far more important than hedging motive. Thus, we ignore risk and liquidity in foreign exchange, in foreign currency deposits. Does that make sense? Okay. So these large players are really dominating the foreign exchange market. So we therefore say that investors are primarily concerned about the rates of return. So we basically ignore the risk part. Okay. So, but the rates of return that investors expect to earn are determined by just two very simple things. One is the interest rates of the assets, and the other is the expected rate of appreciation or depreciation. Okay, does that make sense? Right. So now, so this is the next thing. Once we understand this, then the next thing is actually relatively simple, right? So we just compare the expected rate of return. Okay. So again, I come back to that question, that example. Okay, we have a home currency. Okay, there's a home. I have the option. I'm comparing two options. One is I put my money in a home currency time deposit. The other option is I convert into foreign currency and put in foreign currency time deposit. And then after 1 year, I have the option of converting back to my home currency. So which one give me higher return? Okay. Remember, we have to compare apple with apple and compare orange with orange. You cannot compare apple with orange in the sense that you cannot compare the rate of return in yen with the rate of return in Australian dollar. You cannot compare that. You have to compare both of them with like the same currency. Okay. Okay. So you have to convert the rate of return of foreign currency deposit in terms of your home currency. Okay. So now maybe from okay. So okay here. it's just to tell you that the interest rates are very different. Interest rates for different currency deposit. Here we're talking about 3 months. Okay, these are the I think these are time deposits. 3-month time deposit. So sometimes the dollar use higher interest rates. Sometimes, actually, most of the time, it looks like most of the time the dollar give you higher interest rates. And this is for the past many years, actually, something like 30 years, I think, or even 40, close to 40 years. Okay, so of course there are reasons why the yen interest rate has been low. The Japanese economy has not been doing very well ever since the early 90s. So their interest rate is low. But anyway, so this diagram shows you just the interest rates are very different. But the fact that the interest rate is different. So the fact that the interest rate is higher in a foreign currency doesn't mean that you should buy it. Okay. Why? So for example, okay, think about this. If you go to Hang Seng Bank or HSBC, you go in the bank, they'll say, okay, they will have this table, right? Show you, okay, the time deposit for New Zealand dollar is like 5%, Australian dollars 5%. Hong Kong time deposit is like 2%. So it's very tempting to buy Australian dollar. It's 5% interest rate, right? Hong Kong dollar is 2%. So what's the problem? So do you just go and buy Australian dollar just because of interest rate difference? No.
Compare it in your own currency. You gotta compare it in your own currency, not in just.
Yeah, but how do you do it? So let's say, okay, Hong Kong. Suppose now Hong Kong's time deposit, let's say 1 year time deposit is 2%, right? Australian dollar is 5%. So how do you consider whether you want to buy Australian dollar and put it in 1 year time deposit in Australian dollar? How do you decide? Yeah.
You have to first look at the exchange rate.
Okay.
Predict how it will change after 1 year. And you also have to consider the transaction cost of exchanging the dollar. Like after 1 year, you want to change back the Australian dollar to Hong Kong dollar.
Right.
Then maybe the bank will also charge some
Right.
premium or potential fee.
Right. So usually the transaction cost is already figured in, right? So when they quote you the price, it's already, they already figure in the transaction cost, right? So so we don't have to do that calculation as a retailer, as a retail customer. Just look at the sort of retail price that they quote us. So you have just consider, you're right, that we just consider what is the potential for the Australian, what is the expected rate of depreciation of the Australian dollar versus the Hong Kong dollar, right? If it depreciates more than 3%, then you probably don't want to buy Australian dollar, right? So then you have to think about, what are the factors that will affect this expected rate of depreciation of Australian dollar. So I think you all get the idea, right? So the rest is just to make some do some write it down, just to write it down. Okay, so let's say, for example, here we're talking about the home currency is dollar, is US dollar. Foreign currency is euro. So the interest rate on dollar deposit is 2%. Interest on euro deposit is 4%. So does a euro deposit you a high expected rate of return? Well, it really depends, right? So so you expect 1 year from now is the exchange rate is going to be changed from from $1 per euro to 0.97 per euro. So what does that mean? So each euro so 1 year later, each euro can buy less dollar. That means that you expect that the dollar will actually appreciate. Okay. So the dollar give you lower interest rate, euro give you higher interest rate. However, you also expect the euro to depreciate. Okay. So that here is the calculation. You really need to make a calculation. I would say that immediately you would say, okay, if the euro is expected to depreciate by more than 2%, then you probably don't want to buy euro if you're holding dollar. Okay, so so 100 US dollar can be exchanged to euro, 100 euros. So the exchange rate is 104 euro. So yeah, the interest rate is 4%. Yeah. So after 1 year, you can convert the euro back to dollar and get this this amount. But obviously, you compare this with what? With the 102, you get $102 if you put it in the US dollar deposit. So euro deposit has a lower exchange rate, expected rate of return, lower expected rate of return. So if this is the case, if all investors only worry about the expected rate of return and they don't care about risk or liquidity, then you expect that nobody will be interested in holding euro deposit. Okay, right? So because basically it's that the dollar rate of return on euro deposit is lower than the dollar return, the return on dollar deposit. So the expected rate of appreciation of the euro is negative 3%. So the euro is supposed to depreciate. So there's a so the calculation that we have carried out just now is exact. It's exact, right? So we just multiply. We multiply the 0.97 by 104 and get this number. There is actually a approximation that we usually use. The approximation is to how do we approximate that? We basically how do we carry out to calculate the dollar rate of return on euro deposit? The approximation is simply just to add the euro interest rate with the what we call the expected rate of appreciation of the euro. Okay, so this expected rate of appreciation of euro is the equal to the expected exchange rate in the next period minus the spot exchange rate divided by the spot exchange rate. This is called the expected rate of appreciation of the euro. So remember, this E is when E is higher. The dollar actually depreciates. Okay, so the convention is that, especially when we're talking about dollar, so dollar exchange rate. The convention is that when the exchange rate is higher, it actually means the dollar depreciates. Okay, this is our convention. Remember it. Whenever we say E increases, that means that the exchange rate of the home currency depreciates. So now this is the how do we get this one? Is actually quite simple, right? So what simplification comes from the following thing. So 1 plus x plus times 1 plus y is equal to 1 plus x plus y plus x times y, right? So, but when x and y are small, then we can ignore the last term. So this would be approximately equal to 1 plus x plus y, and when x and y are small. So what do you mean by small? For example, x is less than 0.1 and y is less than 0.1. So for example, things like that. So we can basically ignore this last term, because if these two are less than 0.1, then this will be less than 0.01, right? So so this approximation is pretty good. So this is why we use this approximation. So this is a rule of thumb, and we're going to stick to this. We're going to stick to this because usually interest rates are less than 10% per year, and also the expected rate of appreciation of a currency against another currency is usually less than 10%. So that's why we use that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so here, okay, you can see that the difference in the rates of return on dollar deposit and euro deposit is given by this first expression, the first expression, which you can see that this is the expected rate of this is the dollar rate of return on dollar deposit, okay, and this is the dollar rate of return on euro deposit, okay, or expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit, and this is the expected dollar rate of return on dollar deposit, and the difference is given by this equation, and we're saying that if this expression is positive, then people will all want to keep US dollar deposit, and nobody's interested in keeping euro deposit. Now, this is, of course, when we say nobody is interested, of course, people are different, okay? The market is more than just one person. The market has many, many different people. They have different expectations about what this EE is going to be. One thing very important is this EE, okay? So people have different expectation about this EE, okay? So in reality, you would still have people who will do different things, right? So some people may still keep some euro deposit. Some people keep US dollar deposit. But we are kind of, but when we do this kind of analysis, we're kind of pretending that the market is just one person. Okay, the market is just one person. So that's what we're kind of assuming. Okay. Now here, so let's try to understand the intuition behind this this equation. Okay. So this is what we call the uncovered interest parity condition. Here, let's compare the dollar rate of return on dollar deposit and dollar rate of return on euro deposit. Okay. Here, we have 4 columns: the dollar interest rate, euro interest rate, expected rate of dollar depreciation, and here is the difference between the two, the dollar rate of return on these deposits. Remember, I keep emphasizing the dollar rate of return. Okay, you have to compare apple with apple. You have to have the dollar rate of return on dollar deposit and dollar rate of return on euro deposit. Okay, you have to compare apple with apple. So here, okay, you look at these. The first case, the dollar interest rate is higher than the euro interest rate. Okay, so looks like dollar deposit is attractive, and the expected rate of dollar depreciation is 0. So even without looking at this, by intuition, in the first case, do you want dollar deposit or you want euro deposit? The first case. Dollar, right? Because it uses high interest rate and it's not going to depreciate, right? The second case, the dollar interest rate is higher than the euro interest rate. However, the dollar is expected to depreciate against the euro. Now, so what does that mean? That means the euro is going to appreciate against the dollar, okay? So although euro gives you lower interest rate, but the euro is expected to appreciate. So that gives you an extra advantage, right, of investing in euro. So even though euro give you lower interest rate, but because it's expected to appreciate, and therefore you need to add this with this and compare with that, and it turns out that the difference is exactly 0, so you're indifferent between two. Okay. The third case is same interest differential, but the euro is expected to appreciate by 8%. Which gives you makes it very attractive, right? On an expected value point of view. So because of that, if you add this with this, it's actually higher than that. Therefore, you actually want to keep euro deposit in this period. Now, the last case is the euro actually gives you higher interest rate, but the dollar is expected to appreciate. Okay, so now it's just the reverse. Okay, so you add this with this, and it turns out that it's less than this. Therefore, you should keep the U.S. dollar deposit. Okay, very simple, right? Just to illustrate the intuition that interest rate difference is not the only thing, and then you have to figure in the expected rate of appreciation of the currency, of the foreign currency. So we use the demand of dollar and the demand of foreign currency denominator to construct a model. Okay. So the demand is really coming from the dollar rate of return, expected dollar rate of return of the two things. So it's a no arbitrage condition. So basically, okay, so people are indifferent under this. It's an equilibrium condition, equally desirable under this. So this will be the equilibrium condition, and it's called uncovered interest parity, which basically set the dollar rate of return on dollar deposit should be equal to the dollar rate of return on euro deposit. Otherwise, if the dollar rate of return on dollar deposit is higher than dollar rate of return on euro deposit, then no investor will want to hold euro deposit. It will drive down demand for price of euro, okay. If that is the case, actually, people would all convert euro into dollar, okay? But as they do that, it will lead to the appreciation of the dollar, okay? So what's interesting is that so as a result, the spot exchange rate is going to change, right? If this is true, if this is greater than that, then the E will have to decrease. Okay, so E will have to decrease, and so when E decreases, then the right-hand side will increase. Okay, so given that this is unchanged, okay, so one very important thing is that this is given. This EE is given. We assume that this EE is something that is determined by some economic fundamental, that people somehow, the market somehow expect the exchange rate in the next period is going to be a certain number, okay? And E is a given number, so these three are given, okay? And if this is greater, then to restore equilibrium, E will have to fall so that this thing becomes larger, okay? So people would sell euro and buy dollar. As a result, E will fall, and eventually this becomes equal. This becomes equal. Okay? So this is how the market will get back to equilibrium, according to this theory. So it's a this is a very simple kind of theory, right? So you can, it's a little bit like any other equilibrium condition that you have thought about, you have learned about in the past. So you have a disequilibrium, and then some variable will have to adjust to restore the system back to equilibrium. In this case, the adjustment is through E, through the exchange rate. So, okay, how do changes in current exchange rate affect the expected rate of return on foreign currency deposit? Well, it certainly affected. So depreciation of the domestic currency today lowers the expected rate of return on foreign currency deposits. Why? So when the domestic currency depreciates, the initial, so this is one way of thinking about this is the following. One way to think about this is the following. So suppose the domestic currency depreciates today, okay? But EE is constant, remember. That's a very important assumption that we make. EE is constant. So in the next period, 1 year later, every 100 euro will be converted back into dollar, a certain amount of dollar, which is fixed. Let's say, I don't know, whatever that is, okay? So you already know, you already expect that, 1 year later, every 100 euro will be converted into, $105 or something like that. So the only thing to consider now is, okay, so if the dollar depreciates today, then what does that mean? So for every dollar, I can actually convert into smaller amount of euro. When the dollar depreciates today, right? Every dollar can only be converted into a small amount of euro. That actually will increase the cost of investing in euro, basically, right? So, and therefore, it kind of lowers the expected rate of return of foreign currency deposit. This is true because we assume that expected future exchange rate is constant. Okay? Is that clear? So let me say one more time. When the domestic currency depreciates, the initial cost of investing in foreign currency deposit increases, thereby lowering the expected rate of return of foreign currency deposits, right? Because you need to pay more dollar, or each dollar can be converted into fewer euros today, okay? And that's why the initial cost of investing in euro becomes more expensive, and therefore lower the expected rate of return of foreign currency deposit. Okay. This is the intuition here. Okay. Appreciation, on the other hand, raises the expected rate of return of deposit in foreign currency because when the dollar appreciates today, it means that each dollar can be converted into more euro today. But 1 year later, because EE is constant, 1 year later, it is going to be, fixed. The amount of dollar that you can get for each euro is fixed. It's this number, right? So therefore, the initial cost of visiting foreign currency decreases if the domestic currency appreciates today. It raises expected rate of return of foreign currency deposit. So appreciation of the currency today actually makes foreign currency deposit more attractive. Now, isn't it counterintuitive? If the dollar depreciates today, it actually if the dollar depreciates today, it lowers the expected rate of return of foreign currency deposit. So you don't want, when the dollar depreciates today, you actually have less incentive to invest in euro. You have actually more incentive to keep the dollar when it depreciates today. Is it counterintuitive? It is, right? But why? The mathematics is there, but why is it like that? What's why is it counterintuitive? Why do we have this counterintuitive outcome? Can anybody tell me? Yeah.
You're holding domestic currency.
Yeah.
So if it depreciates and you want to buy foreign currency, it becomes more expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're basically saying the same thing that this slide says, right? So you totally agree with the slide, basically. But isn't it counterintuitive? When your currency actually depreciates, you want to keep it. You actually want to keep it after it has depreciated. Isn't it counterintuitive?
But the prices in your country shouldn't change because it depreciates.
The prices.
The prices of goods in your country.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So it doesn't really matter if you hold foreign currency, I guess.
Okay. So you're talking about the prices of things in your country.
Yeah, and the price your currency is already depreciated.
Hmm.
So it's about what you do next, not about what happened before.
Right.
If you know already that the currency is gonna depreciate, of course you want to hold foreign currency.
Right.
But then since it already happened, it doesn't matter, I guess.
Yeah, you're getting a little bit close, but I think you're getting closer. So any more suggestion? So let's say when the price of a stock falls, do you want to buy it or do you want to sell it?
Buy it.
Yeah. Same thing actually. When your currency depreciates, do you want to buy it or you want to sell it? You want to buy it. So why? When the stock price of price of a certain stock falls, why do you want to buy it? Yeah, it's expected to rise again. And what is the rationale behind that? Because you know that you actually believe that it has a reasonable price next period. It will go back to that reasonable price, right? You think that the fundamentals somehow determines that there is a reasonable price for this stock in the next period. Therefore, if it falls today, you want to buy it. That's the only reason why, to justify why you want to buy it when it's full, when it's cheaper. And that reasonable price in this particular context is this thing. You think this is the reasonable exchange rate in the next period, and you believe it, and it's a constant. When this is constant, when when E rises, that means that the currency depreciates today, you actually want to buy it. Yeah, does it make sense? Okay. So yeah, so basically it's just this kind of argument. This is one way of looking at it, right? The equation is there, the mathematical equation is there. This is the economic intuition behind this. So here is to illustrate, okay, a little bit more the intuition behind this uncovered interest parity condition. So today's dollar-euro exchange rate and the expected dollar return on euro deposits when EE is equal to 1.05 per euro. Here, remember, we actually say that EE is equal to 1.05 per euro. So this is it's constant. EE is constant. Okay? Somehow the market, okay, the assumption is that somehow the market has an idea about what will be the reasonable value of E in the next period, okay, which is EE, 1.0. So given that EE is constant, is fixed at 1.05 per euro, now we want to look at what today's we want to calculate the expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit. Okay, so our purpose in this diagram, in this exercise, is to calculate the expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit. We want to calculate this expression, given that 1.05 EE is equal to 1.05. So so here the EE, this is the spot exchange rate. Is you know, each euro can buy $1.07. The euro interest rate is 0.05, 5%. So okay, so the spot exchange rate is 1.07, but EE is equal to 1.05. What does that mean? So today, each euro can buy more dollar, but in the next period, each euro can actually buy fewer dollars. So you expect the dollar is expected to appreciate during this period. And given that the euro interest rate is 5%, then so first of all, we calculate the expected dollar depreciation rate against euro, which is negative. That means the dollar is expected to appreciate. So to calculate the expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit, you just add this with this. Okay, this plus this will give you this. Okay, this is a minus, so that's why you have a. So the expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit is 3.1%. Okay, which is lower than the euro interest rate because the euro is expected to depreciate in the next period. Okay, The second example is when the spot rate is 1.05, the spot rate is equal to the expected rate in the next period, so there expected to be no appreciation nor depreciation of the dollar, of the euro, and so the expected dollar rate of return on euro will be just 0.05. Okay, so here in this case the spot rate is 1.03. Therefore, the euro is expected to appreciate. The dollar is expected to depreciate. In other words, so the euro is expected to appreciate. So the dollar rate of return on euro will be higher than 0.05. It would be actually it will be 6.9%. Again, here the euro is expected to appreciate. You know, you compare 1.02 with 1.05, right? Again, the dollar rate of return on euro deposit will be greater than 0.05. Okay, even larger. This again, you know, the rate of appreciation of the euro is even larger. So as a result, the expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit is even larger. So here you see that these numbers, they keep rising as this number keeps falling. Okay, given that this is constant. So you can actually plot a diagram. Basically, you can plot a diagram of this against this. Okay, if the our euro is constant for any given R euro, you can plot a diagram. So this is exactly the diagram here. Okay, so it's plotting the spot exchange rate on the vertical axis against the expected dollar rate of return, expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit on the horizontal axis. Okay, so the only thing that varies. So this is a given, and this is given. Remember, this is 0.05. And this is 1.05, right? So as the E changes, this horizontal axis change. So this curve is the expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit. Okay. So when it shifts out, when this shifts out, it means that the for any given E, the expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit increases when this shifts out. Okay. Does it make sense? Now we can talk about the determination of the equilibrium exchange rate. Okay, very, very simple model. So given, you know, given that EE is given, okay, it's exogenous. EE is exogenous, and the euro interest rate is also exogenous, right? So this, remember this green curve, okay, the horizontal magnitude of the green curve gives you the dollar rate of return on euro deposit. In equilibrium, it should be equal to the dollar rate of dollar deposit. Dollar rate of return on dollar deposit is just the dollar interest rate. So in equilibrium, they should be equal, right? So this will give you, the intersection of the two curves will tell you the spot exchange rate. So the spot exchange rate should be E1 in this case. Now, why is this the equilibrium? Because suppose the exchange rate is E2. if the exchange rate is E2, it's not going to be an equilibrium exchange rate because the dollar rate of return on euro deposits is less than dollar rate of return on dollar deposit. So as a result, what happened? Can anybody tell me? So if EE is equal to, if the E is equal to E2, what is going to happen? Can anybody tell me? The dollar rate of return on dollar deposit is higher or lower than the dollar rate of return on euro deposit if E is equal to E2. Can anybody tell me?
Dollar rate is higher.
The dollar rate of return on dollar deposit is higher than the dollar rate of return on euro deposit. And so people would do what? They would buy dollar, they would sell euro and buy dollar, and so the dollar will appreciate, right? So that's why when E is equal to E2, there's a pressure, there's a market force that will try to lower the E, because when the dollar appreciates means E is lower, right? So E will be lower, okay, if E is equal to E2. So there's a force that will somehow drive the E to be lower, okay? And then it will keep, as long as this yellow curve is to the right of the green curve, the people will still want to sell euro and buy dollar, so the dollar will keep appreciating until it gets to become E1. There's no more market force to drive the dollar to appreciate any further, right? Does that make sense? So that's a self-equilibrating force here, market force here. So if, on the other hand, if the exchange rate, spot exchange rate is equal to E3, what happened? So dollar rate of return on euro deposit is lower than the dollar rate of return on euro deposit, and therefore people want to sell the US dollar and buy the euro, and as a result, the dollar will depreciate. When the dollar depreciates, E rises, okay, but E will continue to rise until E becomes E1, and that it will stop there. So this is the equilibrium E1, okay, equilibrium E. So this is how, that's why the intersection of the two curves will give you the equilibrium. So the next thing to do, once we understand this, then we can do some thought experiment, okay? What we call comparative statics, okay? So we can do what? We can, let's say, look at how the changes in the different exogenous variables will affect the spot exchange rate, because this is what we want to do, right? We want to predict the effects of the changes in exogenous variables on the spot exchange rate. This is the purpose of this model. So one thing is, okay, suppose our dollar, suppose this increases, okay, we can find out how it's going to affect the spot exchange rate. Or suppose the euro interest rate increases, how is it going to affect the spot exchange rate, right? Or suppose EE increases, how's it going to affect the spot exchange rate? So we can do three kind of thought experiment, okay? So we can see, okay, this increases, or this increases, or this increases. How is it going to affect the E? Okay. Okay. So this is the thought experiment. So can anybody tell me how to do it? So suppose they do a simple, easy one first. Okay. So suppose the dollar interest rate rises, okay? How's it going to affect the EE? How do you do it? Anybody? Anybody? So, what do you think?
The return on dollar deposits shift to the left.
So this increases, okay? So which curve shifts?
The orange one
Orange curve will shift
to the left.
to the left. This rises
Oh, to the right, to the right.
to the right, okay? And so what happened to E? It will decrease, right? E will fall. That means that the US dollar appreciates, okay? Yeah, so according to what he said, when this rises, this yellow curve will shift to the right, and so it will intersect this green curve at a lower E, so the US dollar will appreciate, okay? You agree? You agree, right? So let's think about the intuition. What's the intuition? Well, the intuition is actually quite simple, right? So if the dollar interest rate rises, that so the dollar rate of return on dollar deposit will increase, right? So because EE is unchanged, EE is unchanged, our euro is unchanged, right? So so as a result, the dollar rate of return on dollar deposit become more attractive. And so people will sell the euro and buy dollar, and the dollar will appreciate. Right? So that's why you actually see this in reality, in practice. So when the dollar when the U.S. Increases interest rate, during the time when the U.S. Federal Reserve increases interest rate, it actually lead to an appreciation of the dollar. So interest rate is a very important variable in affecting the U.S. dollar. Whenever the Federal Reserve increases interest rate, it almost always lead to an appreciation of U.S. dollar. Okay. Okay. So the next thing is how about increase in euro interest rate? So increase in euro interest rate, which curve will shift? The green curve will shift to the right, and so therefore it will intersect the yellow curve at a higher E, right? So dollar will depreciate, which makes a lot of sense because it's just the opposite of what happened previously. The euro becomes more attractive. People will sell dollar, buy euro. The dollar will depreciate. Right? Okay, the final thing, EE increases. This, how is it going to affect the spot exchange rate? So which curve will shift? Anybody? The green curve will shift to left or right? So this increases. That means that people expect the dollar to actually depreciate. You know, the dollar value is going to worth less. The dollar is going to worth less in the next period. Okay, so the expected rate of return of euro deposit, the dollar rate of return on euro deposit is going to increase, right? So because people expect the dollar value to be worth less, dollar to be worth less in the next period. Therefore, the euro is going to worth more dollar in the next period. Okay, so given these two are unchanged, the euro become more. The euro will become more attractive. Okay, so as a result, the expected dollar rate of return on euro deposit will shift to the right. First of all, okay, right, and so the euro is actually expected to appreciate more than before, okay? And so because of that, the dollar becomes less attractive and it will depreciate. Does that make sense? Okay. So, okay, I think I would, for the time being, okay, just stop here and go and talk about the problem set. I want to give you some hint about the problem set, okay? So, so next time we'll talk about the yen carry trade. Okay, is there any questions so far? Okay, so let's talk about the problem set. It's going to be due tomorrow, right? So I think I should give you some hint so that it's, let's see, what is this one? Problem set 1, okay. This is problem set 1. So I think that probably the most challenging question is number 1. But the others are also interesting. This is not an easy problem set, but I really hope you will spend time thinking about this. So the first question asks you about the balance of payment stuff, right? So do you have any questions? I assume that some of you have tried to have attempted the questions, and you may have some questions now. If you have any question, can you ask now? Yeah.
Like, if I sum up 1 billion of part B to like 2.4 minus 4, that does not equal to 0.
If you sum up,
Foreign central banks have purchased 1 billion from Virginia assets in 2010.
right.
And then that's the official, or is that not the official settlement balance?
So you're talking about, let me try to understand your question. So can you be a little bit more specific? You're asking me which part?
About part B1.
B1.
Yeah.
So that I asked you the change in pecuniary central bank's foreign reserves.
Like, because part B gives you extra information that the foreign central bank like increases its buys foreign central banks buys pecuniary reserves for 1 billion, but then you don't really need that to answer this question, right?
In fact, you do need to understand foreign central banks' action in order to answer B1, because you because the financial account, right? The official part of the financial account is determined by the action of domestic central bank as well as foreign central banks.
But wouldn't like foreign non-official parts also purchase pecuniary assets with official reserves, and that will also affect the official
No, for foreign private sector, their action is in the non-official part of the financial account. The official part of the financial account only documents the only account for the action of domestic central bank and foreign central banks. The action of any other actors will be in the non-reserve part of the financial account. Yeah.
But then if you sum up like the 1 billion with 2.4 billion, and then sum up the current account, it is not equal to 0.
Well, that is exactly why the question in B1 asks you to find a number so that it sum up to 0. So you have to so the idea is that to answer B1, you will have to invoke the identity, okay, that current account plus the non-reserve financial account plus the reserve financial account is equal to 0. Okay? You have to invoke that, but the reserve financial account, on the other hand, is determined by the action of both domestic central bank and foreign central banks. Okay? So when this is the balance, this is the financial account balance. So when domestic central bank financial inflow, financial outflow, sorry, let's call it financial outflow. Well, the domestic central bank financial outflow would mean that, that they will buy foreign asset, so it will be a negative contributes to, okay, negative official or reserve, okay, official financial account, okay, a debit, okay, whereas foreign central bank financial, so foreign central bank, okay, this financial outflow means okay, so foreign central bank financial outflow. If the financial outflow means our financial inflow, right? So our financial inflow, that means that that will be a positive in the official financial account, right? So whenever there is financial outflow, that is negative in the financial account. Whenever the financial inflow, that is positive in the financial account. Okay, so this non-reserve part is very well known. So I hope I have answered your question. So you need to so because I think yeah, B says suppose foreign central banks had purchased 1 billion of pecuniary assets in 2010. Okay, so you are given this part. Therefore, you need, from there you can calculate this part. So the idea is you know this part, and then you know this part, right? Yeah, and then therefore you know this part according to this. Once you get this part, then you also given this part. Therefore, you can calculate this part. So, in other words, to be very clear, domestic, so the reserve part, or official, let me call it official, reserve or official part, or official financial account balance, okay. Reserve part of financial account is equal to so this is negative, right? So it has to be domestic central bank financial inflow, right, plus foreign central bank financial outflow. Okay. When I say foreign central bank financial outflow, it means our inflow. Okay. So these two should be the official part of the financial account, which is this part. Okay. So what is balance of payments? Balance of payments is actually domestic central bank. It's actually just the. In fact, the balance of payments is just the negative of this. Just the negative of this, that's the balance of payments. I'm waiting for you to ask questions.
I have another question. Like in Part B, it asks the foreign central bank purchases 1 billion of our access, domestic access. Why is it our non-reserve financial assets account not changed?
Why is it what?
The non-reserve financial account is not changed.
Because this part, well, we assume that, right?
According to the definition, this is the thing that's held by commercial bank and the public. Why is it this is not changed? Because they purchase some access, it must from either central bank or from the public.
I'm giving you one more piece of information in Part B. I'm just giving you one more piece of information. It doesn't, the information I gave you before Part A, that the whole question has, in the whole question, Part A, B, and C, you have to assume the first two lines. The first two lines applies to all parts. In Part B, I give you one more piece of information to answer the question. Right.
Foreign central bank is not equal to rest of the world.
Yeah, actually you have to assume that it's rest of the world. Yeah, because foreign central banks with an S. So it's a little bit, I'm sorry, but I just mean rest of the world. I mean rest of the world, yeah.
Can you explain question 5? I actually don't really understand.
Question 5, okay, any more question about question 1? Question 1 is probably the most challenging. No more question about question 1. So we're running out of time. Question 5, okay. So question 5 actually, so what do you want to know?
Like it says it wasn't traded, like euro wasn't traded before.
Right.
So do you think like immediately after the euro's introduction, the value of foreign exchange trading in euros is greater or less than the value pre-1999?
Right.
Euro didn't exist back then, so what is the difference?
So basically, euro didn't euro didn't exist then, but then you do have an exchange rate between the French franc and German mark with the euro. Actually, there is an exchange rate. Yeah. So there is, in fact, you can evaluate the euro value of these foreign exchange turnover before 1999. In that case, they are in terms of French franc, German mark. There is, in fact, an exchange rate. Yeah, when in the conversion during, in 1999, there is a conversion. Yeah, that's a conversion. All right. There was a conversion rate between French franc and German mark and all these with the euro when the euro was born. So you calculate, just try to calculate the euro amount. You can calculate the euro amount, okay, immediately before. Any other questions? Okay, so I'll see you on Thursday. So some of this, I actually, for example, in question 4, you actually need to read a little bit yourself because we talk about the forward premium. But that is actually should be simple enough that you have to read the appendix and all that. Okay. All right. Okay. See you.